Greetings and salutations, viewers. I'm StarPrincessHLC, and welcome back to Cupid. When we last left off, our dear little friend Katherine committed suicide. Possibly. It might have been that the Marquis drove her to suicide, because apparently, I guess at some point they became an item, and I guess their relationship was on a very rocky edge, and Rosa is thinking, with mostly push from Mother Dearest, who is still in her head, that the Marquis may have done something to push Katherine to suicide. So, we're here to figure it out. So, with that, let us begin. Rosa entered the room with a tray of pastries and a pot of tea. Her duties were finished, and she was allowed a bit of free time. She thought of accompanying Katherine for today's piano lesson. "Kath, do you want some tea?" The girl didn't look her way. She continued to churn out the bitter, melancholic sound from her piano. I'm guessing this is a flashback, because obviously Katherine is dead. Also, Rosa looks really weird in that outfit, just saying. Rosa sighed, her shoulders slumped in defeat. She placed the food on the table. She sat on the stool beside the piano, twiddling her thumbs while her friend continued to stew in her foul mood. "Is that a new composition?" "It sounds nice. Nowadays, you make a new piece every day. It's a shame they're all so sad." Katherine didn't reply to that, but when she spoke again, her words were bitter. "I saw them again, those degenerate louts." Wow, Katherine got big. Like, she looks like her sister now. It's weird. "No shame at all." "Kath, all right, consenting damn adults and all that. At least have the decency to close the door. Sometimes I dare say that they want to get caught. When I walked in on them this morning, eating each other's faces, they had this look on them." "You couldn't say kissing? Because otherwise it sounds dirty." "Like they were daring me to say something. Quoi? Do they want my applause?" "Very nice technique, sire. I very much like the way you swap your spit with my sister. Great tongue action." Oh! So I guess it's that she's engaged to the Marquis, but he's cheating on her with her sister. Interesting. "Très merveilleux." So, yeah, I guess dear sister couldn't resist him either. "And he even has the gall to speak to me. Be a dear and put them on the table, Katherine," he even said. "Like I am a soft-headed giggle mug or of a maid. I'm so flustered I can't speak right. He wanted me to get annoyed, I just know it. Well, for sure I am." Katherine turned to the tea and pastries, stuffed the butter bread into her mouth. Was it at least tasty? Easy there. These damn things. These damn delicious things. Why must they be so delicious? She said the last part angrily, as if she blamed her troubles on the food's relish. Rosa giggled in spite of herself. Katherine wiped her mouth in mock anger. "What are you laughing at, wench?" "Oh! It's almost comical to watch you eat when you're angry, Kath. You're like the giant monsters that attack defenseless towns in horror books." Was Frankenstein around at that time? I have to re-look at that. "Oh, yes?" Katherine made sad, tiny squeals and picked up another piece of bread. "No, no, please spare us!" She adjusted her voice and boomed out like a roar. "The Katherine and Ian monster of the deep doesn't show mercy to anyone." She dropped it in her mouth and chewed savagely. Well, I guess any bit of ladylike qualities is kind of out the window if you're goofing around. "Yum, annihilation is delicious with tea." The two girls giggled. Katherine's rare smile turned into a rueful laugh. and soon Rosa felt her mood turning somber again. What happened anyway? Oh boy. Now you did it. Now you did it.
Aren't you annoyed by it too? Sister has changed ever since she started helping in the chateau. Now it's all Guillaume this, Guillaume that. And as if she wasn't already married. She doesn't even care that people are talking behind her back.
Now she doesn't. Originally she was like, oh, I shouldn't really do that. I mean, it's like, I shouldn't trust this guy, but now all of a sudden it's like, shut up, Marquis, and make out with me!
I'm tired of running around picking fights with gossipers. She hasn't even visited home for a long time. Father misses her a lot. He always asks about her. Father had worked so hard all these years just to give us a comfortable life. Now he is sick, and all she cares about is that dastardly Marquis.
Rosa shrugged. I am a little bit annoyed, but I guess I've gotten used to it. I mean, I kind of expected it by now. Their lives are their own, Kath. She didn't dare divulge more than to Katherine. But it was partially true.
I like Guillaume. He's a nice friend. But I love my sister. They want to stay together, then why not fix this and have at it?
Oh, so they're not actually engaged. She's just annoyed that her sister's flirting with her friend. Or is it? I don't know.
But what irritates me to my damn snatch is the way they are with each other.
Interesting use of words there. Katherine? Katherine recently found the use of explicitives endearing in her speech. Oh, okay. She's like one of those little kids who hears a curse word and it's like you have to say it in every little thing because it's interesting, even though you don't know what it means. Rosa hoped it was a phase.
They are miserable. Any halfwit can see that.
Yes.
I've told Emily time and time again to smarten up. She's hurting a lot of people, including herself. But as if she would listen to her 16-year-old brat of a sister. Even Guillaume is depressed, I can tell. Remember when he used to come and visit us here to have tea? Or when we used to have picnics in the afternoon? We used to run around chasing rodents in the garden.
You ran around. We just watched you get dirty, actually.
That is very true, you nitheads. Back then it used to be fun visiting the chateau. Nowadays we barely even see him. He just stays in his bureau all day brooding. Is it something adults subject themselves to, like a torture ritual? I really don't understand why two people who are clearly unhappy keep at it.
I guess it's kind of a cycle of abuse. I don't know. Like they think they're good for each other, but in reality they're just bringing out the worst in each other. Just saying. That could happen, where it's like you think that you're meant to be together, you think you're in love, but in reality you're kind of hurting each other by staying together. And it's hurting people around you, and you don't even seem to notice because you think you're in love. Rosa did understand. At least some part of her did. She shouldn't exactly, or couldn't exactly explain how pain and love worked. All she knew was that it had something to do with an absurd, obsessive amount of hope. She felt Mother tugging at her mind. And hope could be too. It's like you're hoping that it works out with this person. You kind of hope that they're the one, but in reality it's actually a very abusive relationship. Where you're hurting each other in the process and you don't realize it, and you're bringing out the worst of each other, but you don't realize it. She loved Mother so much. Living with the Paredes gave her ample comparison to her former life. She had finally accepted that Mother was cruel. And yet Mother still gave her love and kept her from wanting. Was that crazy? No, what's crazy is you're still talking to your dead mother years after she died. And she talks back. Perhaps it was the only love she needed. Perhaps it was what she deserved. Rosa shook the thoughts off her mind and just shrugged. I know you are just worried about your sister, Kath. But they will figure it out. Humans learn. Sometimes. People tend to have history repeat itself, just saying. Like, what's the definition of insanity? Trying the same thing multiple times, hoping for different results?
Look at you, all profound and such. You read any good books lately?
Just a riveting account of the ugly duckling and Baa Black Sheep.
Ah, the classics.
They're classics to you. Well, they are quite classic. They are old, and they've been around for years.
I don't know how you put up with it, though. I hate reading words.
In order to write, I have to learn how to read first. I want to write.
Why would you want to do a dastardly thing like writing? It's fun.
This whole thing is writing. What are you talking about? You wouldn't be able to talk if there wasn't writing. Why would you want to hit some crazy strings until your fingers bleed? The two friends laughed again. I want to remember things. I want to write them down. Most of all, I want to feel the way you do when you play the piano, Kath.
Oh?
The way you look when you play, you are passion and bliss in musical form. I feel like love, or it feels like love, like magic. You inspire me to do something fulfilling and grand.
Well, I'm sure you will. Hey, why not write a play one day?
Oh.
Let's do it. You write an amazing play, and I shall provide the music. We'll travel around the country and perform. We'll make lots and lots of money and gain lots of followers. We shall be known as the Parade Caravan of Wonders.
Why do you get the first name? Parade? Are you sure?
Puns are the best, trust me.
Depends on who you're talking to. If you're the one giving the puns, then yeah, that's fun. Usually if you're the one receiving the puns, most of the time you're just, did they really say that? And this is coming from someone who makes stupid puns too. That sounds darn batty, Kathy. See what I mean? Oh yeah, it's fun when you put the puns out. But when you're hearing the puns, it's like, ugh.
From this day forward, nobody's allowed to ever call me Kathy ever again.
The sound of a knock interrupted their giggles.
Katherine, it's me. I need to discuss something important with you.
Frustrated, Katherine pouted at the sound of her sister's voice. She turned back to her piano and began to pound a sarcastically happy tune. Rosa stood up to open the door.
Hello, Rosa.
Madam. She had seen little of the older Paredes sister recently, and it astounded her how old she had begun to look. Her once radiant face looked tired and harrowed, almost crone-like. Under her eyes hung huge bags. And yet she still looked quite dignified, full of pride and pomp, while she's probably covered in powder. Does she have a wig on, too, while she's at it? There was extra rouge on her skin, and her demeanor was elegant. Yeah, that's what I thought. She's covered in makeup. It was as if pride was her only source of nourishment these days.
Do you mind giving Katherine and me a moment of privacy?
Rosa gave a small bow. Of course not, madam. Rosa gathered her nursery books and squeezed Katherine's shoulder before stepping out of the room. Rosa entered the quiet room of the library. She was about to approach the table when she noticed Guillaume already occupying a seat. He was writing something in a book, somewhat immersed in the activity. Rosa stopped dead in her tracks. Good question. Mommy dearest, what should I do? I guess I could leave now while he is not looking.
What are you doing just standing there? He is going to see you. Leave now while you still have the chance.
All right, Mother, maybe you're right. Unfortunately, Guillaume lifted his head and saw her by the door. Oh, hello, Rosa. Rosa took a step back. Maybe it was best to walk away as if this were a mistake. But wouldn't that be rude? He had already seen her, after all. But she had never been alone with him. It was just too awkward. Well, why not just go in? It was going to be fine. And what's the worst that could happen? Famous last words, I know. They had conversed normally before. Yet, that was because Katherine had been around to disperse her awkwardness. Now I look like an idiot. A one-eyed idiot. Guillaume watched her pace in front of the door in amusement. Rosa decided to go in. She had already embarrassed herself enough anyway. There was little left to lose. Besides, there was nowhere else to go in this big house, which is surprising considering it's a big house. She'd already gotten lost in his hallways, much to the annoyance of the maitre d'. The library was her favorite place. If she stayed quietly in one corner, Rosa was sure they wouldn't bother each other. She took a seat at the farthest corner of the table and opened her book. Oh no, he's actually standing up and walking over? No, you horrible man. Just sit over there while I sit over here. Don't try to be normal conversation peoples. Just ignore me. But Guillermo was already beside her, peeking at what she was reading. A cold sweat spread on her scalp. Rosa, that book. Rosa began to chatter nervously. I know it's a children's book, sire. I'm teaching myself to read. I know most commoners don't really bother, but I want to learn. So please don't laugh or mock me. Guillermo pointed to the book. It is upside down. Rosa stared at it. The ducks in the picture had their feet up in the air. Rosa squirmed, feeling the heat on her cheeks. She couldn't think of anything more embarrassing. Hey, it could be worse. You'd be reading porn. I'm sorry. Guillermo's face lost its cheer. What do you need my forgiveness for? Rosa looked up at Guillermo. His eyes lacked the gentle glint they usually had. It was such a subtle change, something felt rather than observed. Oh, something felt rather. Okay, mind went. She thought he would remind her further. His face certainly looked like it. Instead, he sat down beside Rosa, drumming his fingers on his cheek while he watched her wordlessly. Well? Weren't you going to read? What was wrong with him today? He didn't seem like himself. Had he eaten something bad? Had he slept with a prostitute and is now dying of STDs? The aura he exuded was not his usual friendly warmth, yet it wasn't particularly wicked. The look on his face just read slightly and eternally miffed. Rosa turned the book upright and read the words out loud. Once, that is the with the short sound. It is pronounced like this. Guillermo made the sound, his face still in his lazy stare. Rosa nodded and continued. Her nerves were frazzled, but she was actually at ease in his presence. She felt like a child being taught by their parent. The parent was strict, but still caring, and the child was jumpy, but eager to learn and please. Most of all, he would not hurt her for her mistakes. Rosa was almost sure. There lived, the past tense of live. Why do we change it? It is a rule of grammar that... Grammar? Guillermo narrowed his eyes at her. Do you even know your alphabet? Rosa shook her head. You should start there. Guillermo rose from his chair and disappeared amongst the shelves. He left behind an old thick book covered in green felt. This is what he had been writing in earlier. It looked tattered and worn. The pages lay flat on its side so that the book didn't close properly. Rosa reached out to peek at the cover when... You are not to touch that! Rosa's whole body froze at the sound of Guillermo's warning. Guillermo's stare followed her, even as she whispered numerous apologies under her breath. I'm sorry. Guillermo just rolled his eyes. You're always seeking forgiveness for everything. Am I? I'm sorry. Yeah, that's what I was expecting. His hand struck the table in front of Rosa. In the quiet library, the sound rang uncomfortably in her ear. When she looked up, Guillermo's face was looming severely above hers. He moved closer to her, eyes fixed on her intensely. Rosa's mouth hung open. She struggled to say something, but her wits were like the burning ends of a matchstick. Before she could compose herself, she felt Guillermo's hand lift her chin. Rosa's heart thumped loudly inside her chest. Please don't. Not you too. She felt his breath on her face, and her heart sank into despair. Mother's voice resounded in her head. In the end, they are all the same. He is like everyone else. She shut her eye and prepared herself for the worst, like she always did when... Then she felt her face being turned from side to side. She opened her eye to see Guillermo studying her face like a textbook. You are a very attractive girl.
Why do you carry yourself as if it is a slight? He lifted the hair that hid her damaged eye. Rosa clenched her teeth. Is it because you were hurt before? He said so matter-of-factly, like he was stating that sky was blue. Rosa recoiled from his touch. No, I actually did this myself with a cross in a church. I did that to myself. I wasn't talking about your eye. He placed a book on the table. It was a thin pamphlet filled with letters. There were lines on the book that instructed the user to trace letters with their quill. Rosa wanted to focus on it, but she could feel the truth in the Marquis's words stinging her. It was the way you went limp when I touched you. Next time, I advise you to fight back. If you don't want to be touched, then you don't have to be. Do you understand this? But I am weak. Says who? His eyes were humorless. The world cares not for people who think of themselves as victims, Rosa. Hint! Hint, Internet! Hint! If you need power, then be powerful. Hint! To have it, it is necessary to crush things along the way. Rosa flinched under the weight of his stare. She realized that the polite and courteous Guillaume was but a facet. It was still him, but was nothing but an oil portrait, an artwork of his devising. Synthetic, aloof, and irrelevant. Blah, 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 blah. I don't know, my words of today are bleh. It couldn't capture his essence in a few human strokes. Suddenly, Rosa realized he was powerful because he's not a victim. He's not complaining about how weak he is, or trying to tear other people down to make himself look more powerful. Hint! Who are you? She caught herself before saying out loud. You are not Guillaume. And yet, he spoke to her as if he knew what it was like to hurt and to fear. If you don't start acting like yourself, then people will not hesitate to take everything, or use you to push an agenda. He laid out the rest of the books he had brought out. One was an activity book for children. It had a picture of a child holding an apple with an arrow stuck in it. Another was a book of limericks. The other two were thicker books that intimidated her. She would come to know them as Hamlet and Paradise Lost. But the one that caught her eye was an ornately designed book. It had a beautiful red jacket with delicate gold trimmings lining the corners. The Gods and Goddesses of Roman Mythology. Ooh. This would be her favorite book, her treasure, and she knew it like love at first sight. These books are yours. Take them with you. Read the thin ones first, and then gradually build your vocabulary with the thicker ones. Rosa ran her hands over the skin of the red book. She opened the cover gingerly, as if carefully unwrapping a present. Thank you. No thanks needed. I simply showed you some books from a portion of the library you are unaware of. Hey, it's nicer than other people who would probably just say, "Ha ha, look at a commoner who can't read." You are still so generous, even if you are like this. Like what? That? What? Somewhat irritable? Guillaume didn't reply, leaving an awkward silence lingering between them. Then he gave a giant laugh that made Rosa jump out of her skin. I do look damn irritable, don't I? Why? Is it because of Emily? Guillaume's eyes drifted away. No. I've always been. You just pointed it out. But you're not usually like this, especially with Katherine and the townspeople. I find it easy to adapt to people, especially to the ones I like. Guillaume looked at Rosa as if he had just become aware of her presence. Makes me wonder why I am so stern with you. I'm sorry. Rosa shook her head. I somehow prefer this side of you. Guillaume cocked his head to the side. He brought out the green book that Rosa noticed earlier. This is called a journal. When you learn to write, start one. What is it? Something you can use to remember yourself when you've forgotten. Does it work? It used to. Nowadays, not anymore. Oh. The act itself is the only thing I remember. Now, let's start with your vowels.
A scream pierced the halls of the chateau and into my eardrums. It was Katherine. Guillerme sprinted to the door with Rosa not far behind. Back in the piano room, Katherine took a shaky step towards her sister. She wasn't moving at all.
I didn't. It was an accident. Emily.
She was overcome with the urge to approach her sister and shake her awake. Make sure she was okay, but it was a nasty fall.
Emily?
Katherine saw the way her sister's head snapped back as it collided with the sharp corner of the piano. She watched it all like a series of photographs in her head. She had to check on her, but her feet refused to move. Instead, she began to retreat into a corner. She didn't even notice her legs were moving until her forehead touched the wall. She didn't want to turn around. Oh, her sister was on the floor. Her eyes were still open, unblinking. It was an accident. It was nothing but an accident.
Was it?
She pushed first. She got really scary. She strangled me.
What? That's absurd. Are you sure? Would she do that?
I don't know. I think she did. Katherine touched her throat. It felt fine. That pretty girl, Emily, is it? She really believes just because the Marquis took her in that he's interested in her? Well, she's obsessed with the master. The apple doesn't fall far from the tree. Wasn't her mother a bit, not right in the head? It probably runs in the family. Emily had looked mad. Her eyes had burned with malice for her as she had closed her fingers around Katherine's neck. But she couldn't remember if that had really happened. Sister was always kind to her. She would never ever hurt her, even when they got into fights. Sister loved her. Am I turning mad? I have the blood of a madwoman. Am I going to end up like her? I only told her the truth. Guillerme doesn't care for her. And she doesn't even care for him that much either. It was all just chaff, their relationship. No sense trying to make everyone else miserable too. But she called me jealous and a bitch. She has never called me a bitch. She said they have decided to send me away. My lessons sent home. The piano replaced. It was for my own good, she said. I don't have to travel here all the time. I can concentrate on my own endeavors. I can make new friends. But I know she just doesn't want me near the chateau or Guillerme. She hates it when I catch her with him. Perhaps this morning was the last straw? She hates it, but she also smirks me when I see them, like she basks in it. I think I might hate her. Katherine's thoughts ran through her head like a storm. They poured out of her aimlessly. I wonder if the piano is broken. Am I going to pay for it? What will become of us without Sister's wages? What of Father's medicine? What of my dreams? Sister can't be dead. Sister can't be dead. Katherine brought her fingers to her lips and nibbled on her thumb. She didn't notice this. Her mind was preoccupied. She was in her corner of the wall, biting her fingers. It was a tiny comfort in a rapidly collapsing world. Guillerme opened the door and found Emily lying on the floor. An ugly gash broke the skin of her forehead. Facing the wall was Katherine, shivering like a leaf and viciously devouring one of her fingernails. He approached her cautiously. "Katherine!" Rosa was out of breath, but she was still able to let out a gasp at the scene. Emily's lifeless eyes stared up at nothing, while Katherine pressed herself into a corner. What had happened after she had left? "Rosa, will you call for help, please? See that someone checks on Emily." Rosa did as she was told, but what she really wanted to do was hug Katherine herself. Guillerme took a small step towards her. He called out her name slowly, coaxingly. Katherine turned her head, her thumb still on her lower lip. "It was an accident, I swear." "Of course it was, Katherine, of course it was." "She pushed me first. She wanted me sent away. She wanted me gone."
You can tell me about it later. Let me take you away from this room.
What have I done?
Katherine fell to her knees and wept. Large sobs sucked the air out of her. She felt like drowning, trying to keep herself afloat in between sobs. Every exhale was a squeezing pain in her lungs. She felt Giame's arms wrap around her.
What have I done? What have I done?
You didn't do anything, ma chérie. This is not your fault. There was a bitter bulge building up in her throat, and she felt that no amount of crying could push it back down.
What am I going to do? Father is... Sister... I'm so scared.
Giame's arms wound tighter around her, and she clutched onto his warmth in the vast sea of fear. You don't have to be. I will always be by your side. Katherine, I will take care of you and your father, all right? You don't have to worry about your future. Her tears soaked his shirt through, but the squeezing in her chest felt less painful.
Why did you do this? Why do you care so much for me?
Giame's brows furrowed, as if confused that she even asked. I just do. It was a boldly stated fact, as if painfully obvious, as if Katherine was a fool for not knowing it. It made Katherine's heart expand in her ribs. When she looked back, she would recall this as the moment she fell in love with him. The look in his eyes was reassuring and strong. She wasn't alone. She was going to be all right. Let's get you away from here. He supported her arms and stood her up, careful to block the view of her sister from her eyes. He led her to the door. Katherine hated how fast her relief came. She was still drenched in sorrow at her sister's death. Her father would not take well to the news, especially in his health. But she was all right, and she hated it. Rosa was with her. She didn't have to leave her piano. Her dreams, him, nothing had to change. And most importantly, she hated the voice that came whispering in her head over and over again.
Thank goodness she's dead. Thank goodness.
Huh. Well, that was interesting. The first candle is lit. This candle is storage. The love for familiars. The cleanest love. Rosa stared at the blue candle glowing in her hand as she chanted her spell.
Trust is the veil that conceals and deceives. Trick his eyes and his heart with the warmth from this candle's flame. A bond of blood like kin will be forged. Weave this trust so his tongue will yield to what is wrought, or what is sought.
Huh. Interesting. I'd say that's a good place to leave it off. So, I guess she's casting a spell, and I guess we were kind of reminiscing of, like, when it all started to fall apart, when I guess it mainly started when Katherine, in a fit of rage, killed her older sister. Wow. That was quite a change in pace, wasn't it? Well, I guess we'll visit Catherine's tomb in the next episode. But for now, this is StarPrincessHLC saying thank you very much for watching, and have a fond farewell.